Time. Okay, Brendan Kirby from AL.com now. Next question.
Thank you. Mr. Milstead and Mr. Dunn, you both essentially are asking voters of this county to fire their sheriff. So I'd like to ask you both, what about his performance merits his termination? And Sheriff, as you address that, if you could tell us what you think your greatest accomplishment as sheriff has been.
Mr. Milstead, you can start.
If you don't mind, repeat that question.
Sure. You're running against the incumbent, so you're essentially asking that voters fire the sheriff, and I just would like you to elaborate on what about his performance merits that firing.
We have several issues here. One issue is, and a huge complaint that I've received, and in all due respect to Sheriff Mack, he wrote a bill that eliminated 99.5% of the populace of Baldwin County from being able to run for sheriff. The legislative delegation took it, passed it without any input from the voters, no chance to vote on it, no publishing of it, etc. Two, he's caused quite a controversy with the purchase of a armored vehicle, which gives the appearance of militarization of the sheriff's office. And in my opinion, and having served time with the sheriff's office, I believe that vehicle is not necessary. I'm all for our officers' safety. And third is, as I've said before, the sheriff's office is not providing the law enforcement protection to the 2/3 of the unincorporated area of Baldwin County.
All right, Mr. Milstead, thank you. Mr. Dunn.
Well, the biggest issue I see is that in the last 7 years that the sheriff has been in office, that I've seen where politics have played too much in the decision making and not just doing what's right and following the letter of the law and obeying the Constitution. You have to have a sheriff that's willing to step up and protect all your rights. And there's not two separate laws, one for the sheriff and one for the citizens. We're all on the same page, and we need to learn how to work together. And you have to stand up. The politics have to be removed inside the office as well. It's a morale destroyer. And when you have low morale, you have your service for the community goes down. And so that's one of the things that I think is one of the two biggest issues is obeying the Constitution and bring the morale up and to provide a better service.
Sheriff Mack.
As to the issue on the qualification bill, and I'm sure there may be an additional question to that, my opponent is incorrect. That bill was advertised. It was passed under current Alabama law that does allow local legislation. The legislative delegation did endorse that bill and pushed it through as far as it presenting it in the legislature on the qualification to hold your sheriff accountable, to let your sheriff be accountable in continuing education and in qualifications, because this is the one position in law enforcement that you get to elect, and you should demand a high quality and standard for your sheriff. As to this issue of policing in the unincorporated areas, this past year we dropped crime over on an average 13% in the unincorporated areas. If we weren't patrolling these areas, if we weren't going out and servicing the people, I don't think we would be able to reduce crime. We have had positive, great law enforcement by the deputies of this office that have went out there and worked in our incorporated areas. As to the morale issue that Mr. Dunn brings up with the sheriff's office, I will submit to you that morale is actually at an all-time high.
Time. Thank you very much. Clip McCollum, please.
Thank you, Bob. In late April, Bay Minette resident Victor Brown died after smoking the drug spice, or synthetic marijuana, perhaps highlighting the problem illegal drugs are causing in Baldwin County. What would you do to address and combat the issues that illegal drugs like synthetic marijuana, meth, and heroin are causing in Baldwin County?
Mr. Dunn.
Well, in response to the sheriff's statistics of where the crime rate is going down, well, spice is a crime, and it's poisoning our youth and destroying families, just like the meth epidemic is. And the sheriff's office has the same number of narcotics investigators as they had 19 years ago when I started. It hadn't changed. And I've heard both the sheriff and like Mr. Milstead speak of one of the number one problems in the county is drugs. But yet we haven't increased our numbers to work that and combat that epidemic. And so as crime rate goes down, we just had a death in Mobile County the same way, and before long with the population growth, we're going to be just like Mobile County. The crime is coming in here, and we're going to have to make decisions and step up our patrol efforts and our manpower.
Okay, Sheriff Mack, please.
Synthetic marijuana is a misnomer, folks. It's synthetic poison. It is not marijuana, and it is a danger to our society. Just last week, I was in a meeting with Sheriff Cochran and other individuals in Mobile County and from Baldwin County to start putting together to how to eradicate this drug that's coming into our society, and particularly among our teenagers. We have a plan that we're going to implement not only immediately but also this summer with our children and coming up into the school year to specifically address the issue of spice in this illegal drug. Mr. Dunn said that the same number of narcotics investigators is the same number that was there a few years ago. Well, I'll submit to you that perhaps the people that are doing our narcotics investigations today are doing a better job than what was being done a few years ago. Through technology, through efficiency, through competency, we are fighting and winning the battle on drugs in Baldwin County. All you've got to do is read the newspaper, look on the TV, and look at the number of drug arrests that we're getting, and we're fighting it every day. And I'm very proud of our efforts, particularly in the narcotics arena and as we combat this new drug, spice.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Milstead.
Well, spice is a designer drug just like those drugs that we had back in the 60s and 70s, and education for our children is nice and it's certainly necessary. But again, going back to my original point about the unincorporated areas of this county, there are meth labs now that are operating out of the trunks of cars. Meth is a pervasive problem in Baldwin County. The North Baldwin County woods are full of meth labs. Our Baldwin County Drug Task Force has not responded. People are going to the Walmarts and the drugstores and they're calling it smurfing, and that's where they go and they buy over-the-counter Sudafed to get the ephedrine and cook it out of it. Very little, if anything, is being done about this. They are approaching people in the Walmart parking lots, giving them the money to go and buy the drug and telling them to keep the change. And I submit to you that it has not been reduced, and unfortunately, we do not have a paper and much news media response as to reporting these drug arrests and whatnot, and which I think is a disservice to the residents of the county for you to know really what is going on.
Thank you, Mr. Milstead. Thank you. Now we're going to get a question from Lanice Lagan that comes actually from one of you. Lanice?
All right, thank you, Bob. We've been getting a lot of questions on social media. We're taking your questions on Twitter, Facebook, and then also a lot of people that came out here tonight have submitted their questions to me as well. Our digital executive producer is over there working all of our social media platforms right now, taking your questions. You still have time to get them in. So let's take a look at one of the questions that's coming in from Twitter right now. And that question is concerning jail overcrowding. They want to know what the candidates will do, what is their agenda concerning jail overcrowding.
Okay, Sheriff, we can start with you.
When I became sheriff in 2007, our jail was overcrowded. Your jail basically at that time was about a 625-bed jail. We actually took an area of the jail that had been more or less mothballed into a storage area. We converted that into existing bed space, bringing the total number of beds up to 649. We were faced with a population at times of well over 700 inmates. We immediately implemented a program called Community Corrections, which helped us to manage our jail population in working with individuals and giving the judges the opportunity to do different sentences. It's becoming harder and harder to send people to state prison in our state because of the Alabama sentencing guidelines. So more and more people are being sentenced to your county jail, and that falls back on the sheriff's shoulders. Right now, I think our daily population is averaging about 550 to 570, so we are not at capacity. We do have room through efficiency and management. However, we will need to grow our jail as the population of Baldwin County grows. We do have a plan for that. We're currently exploring different options, one of which is the cooperation of a jail that will be in the Gulf Shores, Foley, and Orange Beach area.
Thank you, Sheriff. Time. Mr. Milstead.
The sheriff talks about community corrections. We researched community corrections thoroughly, okay? Community corrections is really a transference of the state's problems back to the county level by holding prisoners that have been convicted of felonies in what is called a community corrections program. They still have to sleep in the jail, and they go out in the communities and work during the day. I am told by members of the county commission that that budget now for community corrections has expanded to something like $1 million when The thing was sold on it being self-sustaining by keeping part of the monies that the prisoners earned and getting a small reimbursement from the state. I'm also told by many, many members of the public and the bonding companies that it's taking 5 and 6 hours to get people bonded out of that jail. So you, as a member of the public, if you go up there to get a loved one bonded out of that jail, you may sit in that anteroom for 5 or 6 hours waiting to get the necessary documentation to get that person out.
Thank you, Mr.
It
Milstead.
shouldn't be over an hour.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn.
Well, the sheriff said that they're looking at plans of building a jail in the south end of the county. Well, I'm for that only if we get our other elected officials, our judges, to start utilizing our county courthouses. The 2 satellite offices in Fairhope and Foley, the jail has to stay in a close proximity to where you're going to have court because they're transported back and forth to court daily. So if we're not going to utilize our 2 satellite courthouses for trials for the south end of the county, then it's pointless. So we have to get the judges on board with us too to make this thing work.
All right, Mr. Dunn. Lori Dubose has our next question.
Thank you, Bob. In light of a recent death from a high-speed chase in the county, what is the Sheriff's Department's pursuit policy, and what, if anything, would you change about it?
Mr. Milstead.
Well, the pursuit policy, as I remember it, and unless it's been changed when I was there as chief deputy, is that you break off a pursuit if it's going to pose more danger to the public than and perhaps to the officer. And in this case, I don't know all the facts other than what I saw on the news media. I don't know what speeds they reached. I understand that this individual refused to stop for an undercover officer after he displayed a badge. A marked unit got involved. He dodged through all kinds of cars and parking lots and ran back into the street and collided with somebody at an intersection. It's a very unfortunate thing, and as to where the policy was being followed at that time, I do not know.
Mr. Dunn.
Well, that was an unfortunate situation, very unfortunate. I'm like Mr. Mills said, I don't have all the facts about that case, and it's hard to sit here and second guess what that officer did or didn't do. But the policy should be that if whatever you're trying to stop a person for and the danger it's going to commit to the community, you have to weigh those things. But an officer has to only have a few seconds to weigh the outcome or the risk assessment, and that has to come quickly. Whether it's that stop is really worth the trying to run somebody through the heavy crowd like in Foley. And so you'd have to weigh those options, and it used to be if you knew the identity of a subject or if it was a misdemeanor thing, you'd break off immediately if it was a danger to the public.
All right, Sheriff Mack.
The Sheriff's Office does have a standard policy, in fact a very detailed policy, as it relates to what is commonly referred to as high-speed pursuits. That policy is reviewed every time that we have a pursuit to see if the deputies did follow the policy. It is a weighted policy. In other words, certain circumstances have to be weighted by that deputy when they engage in that pursuit, whether they continue in that pursuit. In this particular incident, it was a very tragic thing. A man lost his life, but he lost his life at the hands of a criminal who was refusing to stop for law enforcement during a legal stop. Every one of these chases that we sometimes unfortunately have to be involved in as we enforce the law, we review and we make sure that they are adhered to in the policy so that hopefully we never have to do another one. We don't want to do these, but sometimes we're left no choice. But there is a policy in place, and that policy is constantly reviewed in every incident.
All right, Sheriff Mack, thank you very much. We are about halfway through our candidates debate here from Homestead Village in Fairhope. Thank you for watching it on CW55 and our website, fox10tv.com. We'll be back in just a minute.
I hope you're enjoying the debate. I'm Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith with a quick weather update here on Fox 10 from Fox 10 News. And to the northwest of Mobile and back up here into Greene County, we've got showers up in Greene County around Leakesville and up near Chatham. We've also got showers over towards Santa Rosa County. Not as heavy with the rain as it has been, and we're definitely getting improvements in Mobile County and in Baldwin County. Showers throughout the forecast area, streaming from the north up off the Gulf, and we have a flash flood watch in effect across the Gulf Coast. That'll remain in effect through tomorrow evening. I'll have an update on what you can expect with your forecast on Fox 10 News at 9 p.m.
And welcome back to our live coverage of the Sheriff's Debate here at Homestead Village in Fairhope. I'm Bob Grip with Lanice Lagan, and we have our three sheriff's candidates here with you. We're going to get another question now from our social media panel. Lanice, you have it.